Path of Totality by K.N. Gould. Prologue. From the outside, the McGarrett house, nestled in its cul-de-sac on Springtime Way, needed a little work. There were sections of fence that should have been replaced a year or two ago. Weeds and moss grew along the cracks in the driveway, and the entire house was due a repainting. It was a house that belonged to a busy family. On the inside, the McGarrett house slept soundly. Faint moonlight shone through the parted curtains of the otherwise dark living room. The room was cluttered, but not dirty. A few toys, left out after bedtime, were pushed to the side out of the way. Books and magazines set on the coffee table looked like they would remain there, read or otherwise, until company was expected and a quick cleanup was in order. The woman walking through the house at this dark hour did not belong to the house, did not belong in the house. Charlotte's graceful, trespassing steps took her closer to the photographs on the walls. Framed pictures, all of them family photos, were abundant. Candid shots of a happy family at the lake, along with professional, posed pictures in their Sunday best, started in one corner. The kids, two boys as well as their loving parents, got older as the pictures moved down the wall. This wasn't just a house. This was a home. Charlotte made her way into the kitchen. Dishes from that evening's dinner were stacked neatly in the sink. Crayon artwork covered the refrigerator. Lunch boxes with cartoon characters on them were lined up on the counter, ready to be packed for school in the morning. The soft glow from the stove top's digital clock partly illuminated Charlotte's long blonde hair, so blonde it was almost white, as she ran her hands along the countertop. Her short, simple black dress stood out against her pale skin. Her bare feet barely made a sound on the wood floor. On the inside of her forearm, her tattoo, an 8-pointed star, as black as her dress, seemed to move with a will of its own in the shadows. Serpents wound around each point, 2 sets of glinting red eyes piercing the dark. Backtracking first through the living room, she made her way down the hall towards the bedrooms. She was in no hurry. Nobody in the house would wake unless she became very unruly. Her well-practiced rituals, honed over many years, assured her of that. She was nothing if not careful. An ounce of preparation was always worth a pound of cure. The first door on the left stood wide open, and a child's nightlight softly lit the room. Toys littered the floor, but a space had been cleared to make a walkway from the door to the bed. The young boy in the bed slept soundly with his mouth wide open. He'd kicked his blankets off during the night and was now uncovered and sprawled out, arms and legs splayed in every direction. She bent down and gently pulled the blanket back over the boy. He rolled over and smacked his lips together a few times, but did not wake. Smiling, she ran her fingers through his hair. The next door was closed tight. Hinges squealed as Charlotte opened the door. The silence of the sleeping house enhanced the sound tenfold. Without so much as a pause, she entered the room. This bedroom belonged to an older boy. He had outgrown his fear of the dark and needed no nightlight. He didn't even need to keep the door open at night. The boy in the bed was still a child, though, still a few years away from needing a shave. He had the same blonde hair as his brother in the other room. Trophies, mostly baseball, lined his shelves. Posters of athletes, again mostly baseball, plastered his walls. Charlotte picked up one of his trophies, a small statue of an adult baseball player. The statue was ready and cocked back to swing at an unseen fastball. The small wood base bore an inscription: Nolan McGarrett, 7th grade, Green Dragons. She set the keepsake back carefully on the shelf with the others of its kind. For some odd reason, Nolan slept with his head down at the foot of the bed. She knelt and studied his face. His sleep was sound. He never stirred as she caressed his cheek with the back of her hand. She saved the master bedroom for last. Stopping at the open door, Charlotte took in the scene. Husband and wife slept back to back on the queen-size bed. The wife lay closest to the door. Both of them slept with pillows over their head, presumably to block out sound, light, or maybe both. She approached the lady of the house first. Gently removing the pillow from her head, Charlotte looked over Mrs. McGarrett. Even in her current state of slumber, she was pretty enough in her own way. Dirty blonde hair pulled back into a ponytail, and a shirt 3 sizes too big for her completed her bedtime look. Perhaps the shirt had once belonged to her husband. Charlotte slowly crawled over Mrs. McGarrett and into the bed. She didn't worry about waking the sleeping couple, even when she was close enough to smell the woman's moisturizer or the man's dried sweat. Sitting between the two, her back against the headboard, Charlotte savored the moment. This was her favorite part, the moment before, when all is right in their little world and they have no idea how soon it will change. Today, their biggest worry was whether they could wait until the next paycheck before getting the brakes fixed in their 10-year-old minivan. Perhaps, when it had all crumbled around them, they would think back on better, happier times. Maybe they would remember this day and how well they had all gone to bed thinking how lucky and blessed they were. What was more likely was that the McGarrett family would have no inkling of the exact point in time it all went so horribly wrong. They wouldn't even know there had been such a moment as it happened. She turned her attention to Mr. McGarrett. As she removed the pillow from his head, she was struck by how much he reminded her of his youngest son in the other room. Not so much in appearance. The children clearly took after their mother, but in the way they slept. His mouth was wide open and the blankets only partially covered his limbs. To her, he looked like a large child. She leaned down and whispered into his ear. Her fingertips lightly brushed against his neck, and the tattoo on her arm undulated in response. His brow furrowed and his head twitched slightly, but his sleep remained deep. In the morning, he might remember this encounter, but only vaguely, like a bad dream. After she was done, she leaned down a little closer and bit down on his earlobe. It wasn't hard enough to draw blood or to cause any pain, but hard enough to leave a small mark behind when she finally let go. Charlotte kissed him on his cheek and smiled to herself. On her hands and knees, she slithered backwards out of the bed. Adjusting her dress, she spotted the item she sought. The laptop, closed and powered down for the night, sat on the dresser next to where Mr. McGarrett once again slept peacefully. 3 steps took her to the dresser. Opening and turning on the computer took only a matter of seconds. The picture on the screen was of the happy family at the beach. Dad held the camera high while kissing Mom. The kids made faces at the camera over their shoulders. Charlotte closed her eyes, took one deep breath, and then another. Running her fingers over the computer screen, she could feel her heartbeat slowing down. As her pulse slowed, she began to whisper. The words she whispered were indecipherable and rapid. A thin sheet of sweat appeared on her forehead. Charlotte tipped her head back and opened her eyes. Her hand moved back and forth over the screen. The picture distorted and deformed with her movements, as if the subjects were made of clay. A tinge of red touched the image, darkening it until it completely shrouded the memory. She pulled her hand away, and the photo snapped back to normal. There, Charlotte exhaled. All done. She turned back to the marital bed, taking one last look before leaving the room. Charlotte didn't spare a glance at the children's room as she walked by. She had done what she came to do, and now it was time to leave. She let herself out the same way she came in, through the front door. She was careful to lock the door before easing it shut behind her. You can never be too careful these days. Outside, the streetlights were on and sporadically illuminating the neighborhood. Charlotte strolled back into the darkness, pausing every so often to gracefully spin, dancing to a tune only she could hear.